and outreach team. The reason I joined Titan Talks because I think Titan Talks has so much potential to grow as a club and a community to California State University students. A fun fact about me is I have traveled to more than 10 countries in the last 5 years.
Hi, my name is Bianca. I'm also a senior here at Cal State Fullerton with a major in business administration with a concentration in marketing. I am on the social media marketing board here at Titan Talks, and I joined because I love TED Talks. I watch it all the time and just wanted to be a part of preparing the presenters and watching it all come to life. For fun, I love to go to concerts and travel.
In today's workshop, we're going to talk about refining your ideas. There are two parts. The first part is about how to edit your speech, and the second one is appropriate tone for content. First, editing. The first thing we want to talk about is why we have to edit. Editing is when you begin doing as you finish your first draft. You reread the draft to make sure the transitions between paragraphs are smooth and your evidence really backs up your argument. There are several editing levels that can help you to improve your speech. In addition, there are many factors to consider that you often overlook while making your first speech. Sometimes, you just have to do it and write down whatever you think and make an edit whenever appropriate. You want your speech to have a lasting impact on your audience, so you need to go back and make sure that it flows. One quote that really stuck out to me was, "The best speeches are not written, they are rewritten." This could not be more true. The best speeches require you to go back over and over again, really looking at the speech from multiple angles to get a great finished product. This involves looking at the content of your speech, improving the clarity, revisiting the style, and taking a step back for the overall impact. Content. Ask yourself about the content of the speech. What is the solid material in your speech that you are revolving your claims around? It might be an anecdote, a personal memory, or anything else that serves as the subject of your speech. One of the most obvious things about content that still needs to be said is make sure the content is accurate. It's really hard sometimes to tell what is true and what isn't. Any claims you are making should be accurate and you should be able to back them up with logic, reason, or just hard evidence. Content is one of the few areas where these truths really matters and does not get to be subjective. Once you have that, there's your speech make an argument. The argument is the purpose of having the content. It's the point that you're driving home. This has to be accurate and reasonable as well. Your argument should be complete and consistent throughout the speech. One way you can support the argument is by providing adequate evidence to each point. Clarity. Make sure to define any important terms that might be unclear to your reader. You may want to ask yourself if the meaning of each sentence is clear. For instance, a good technique is to read your paper one sentence at a time and read it out loud. This will help you go through every sentence and notice if there is wording that may be unclear. Using the right word to express your ideas is important. For simplicity, try not to use the words that are not part of your normal vocabulary and stick with words that you use on a daily basis. Style. This determines your overall tone and can greatly change the lasting impact of the speech, which we will talk about afterwards. We'll talk more on the lasting impact in the next section. In many ways, your style is similar to your tone. People can describe the style of the speech as formal, informal, persuasive, and many others. By now, you have already developed your overall structure and content. The styles come into play with smaller choices in cohesiveness. This includes your sentence structure. Make sure to vary up the complex from the simple. Think about where to place your sentences and which one deserve emphasis. Additionally, you should consider if your speech is in active or passive voice. Too much passive voice can often deter from the overall style or tone and make your speech boring. Lastly, Check for unnecessary or filler statements. Some common ones are there is, like, and due to the effect. Unless you have to use this statement in the context of your speech, oftentimes these just eat up time and are not really needed for conveying the point. Impact. At this point of the speech, you need to start thinking about how to make it a lasting impact on your audience. This can be done with stories from your past or anything that will bring a positive moral story to your audience. Audience tend to only want to hear something that they want to. Otherwise, they are not interested at all. Try to find a hook or attention grabber so that the audience will focus their attention toward your speech. For instance, you can ask a series of rhetorical questions. A common way to engage the audience at the start is to ask a rhetorical question. One of my favorite TED talkers, Simon Sinek, he starts with, how do you explain when things don't go as we assumed? A series of rhetorical questions will make the audience question themselves and ponder for answers. Also, vivid descriptions allow people to picture their surroundings with the real event. The best way to convey your message to the audience is trying to put them into your own shoes. People will not understand what others are going through until they feel it themselves. Using the right messages will make them understand better the message you are trying to send. Lastly, proofreading. Why is it really important? Most of the time, we tend to skip the proofread due to project deadlines, but it is very important if you want your content to establish an emotional connection with the audience. Proofread is the last step of editing to make sure that the points flow from start to end and have no errors. For instance, proofread helps minimize misspelled words, grammatical errors, and punctuation. This is just a guide. I know you're not learning this today. The way you can improve your proofreading is by reading every word slowly and out loud. Also, you want to make sure that you have a consistent flow of information throughout the speech. Next, I'm going to pass it to Bianca.
Okay, so things to think about during editing. These are just a few things to take note of on your rough drafts. There are 5 important steps. We have volume, clarity, emphasis, pacing, and tone and melody. Next slide, please. First, we will go over volume. If volume is something that you've noticed to have an issue with or any of the next few points, it is important to take notes of these things throughout your rough draft just to remind you of these points when you are going to speak. Next is clarity. We spoke about clarity, or Michael spoke about clarity when it came to content. And just to re-emphasize, it is important to articulate every word to ensure clarity on your part and understanding on the part of your audience. So keep note of how to pronounce certain words on your rough draft if needed. As for emphasis, even in the same sentence, emphasizing different words can change the focus of a message. For example, we have here, I wanted that strawberry ice cream versus I wanted that strawberry ice cream versus I wanted that strawberry ice cream. As you can see, emphasizing certain words can change the entire meaning. So just make sure you're emphasizing the right words. Maybe practice underlining certain areas of your speech so when you do end up practicing out loud, you're emphasizing the right words. Now we have pauses. If you have watched TED Talks, you can see that many of them use pauses in strategic areas of their speech. It is said that pauses can make the difference between a good and excellent speech. With that being said, they are used to generate expectations about something that's going to be said, or to enable the presenter to breathe properly, or even to give listeners a chance to absorb something that's just been said. So with that being said, you can highlight certain areas of your draft so you know where you want to pause. That way you can practice it in the future. So next is pacing. Pacing is important because if you give a speech too quickly, it can hinder the understanding and generate anxiety in the audience. If a speech is given too slow, it can tire and bore people. Now for tone. So how do you want to set the tone of your speech? There are many different tones people use. It is important to know your audience and your environment. For example, your tone when you are teaching a kid, your tone when you are presenting a project at school, and when you are telling a friend's story are all different tones. We don't want to come off monotone like we are giving a lecture. So presenting is like a musical performance. It's like a composition, which actually brings us to Professor Simoes' presentation, who will touch on a few points that we have mentioned.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Let me see if I could actually let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Simoes, Paulo Simoes. I am a honors history professor here at Cal State Fullerton. Several of you have actually taken my classes before. I recognize not only the names, but your faces. And some of you I'm meeting for the first time. So let me share my screen. So, okay. Let me see if I can do that.
So I just wanted to preface really quickly that Professor Simoes is going to be giving a story, and for us to take what we've learned through the presentation today and try to connect what you've heard and listen to his presentation from this way, so that you can basically like see what areas you want to improve in for your presentation. So with that, I'll pass it back to Professor Simoes.
Thank you. One of the things that I want to emphasize is very often when we something that, it could be a business speech, it could be an academic presentation, everything. We always have to keep sight of the audience itself. Not only the age of the audience, but the interest, the occasion and stuff. But we also have to make certain that we bring the audience in a very human level. Now, as a history professor, I have very often faced this dilemma. History is usually seen as something that's very remote, something that is very far away. Very often history becomes simply reduced to, names and dates that happened a long time ago and have no bearing on our lives, our daily lives. What I've learned as a presenter, a speaker, basically, I started practicing even before I was a history professor as a stage performer. I was an opera singer for many years, and I still sing every once in a while. And I realized that every performance is, you must connect with the audience. You must bring them in on a human level. And so as a history professor, I try to do this too, to not simply talk about the, events, large events, as if they were, again, something in the past disconnected from each person, but to bring every person in, and to bring it to a human level so that we can feel the emotions, feel and participate in the experiences of that moment, of the historical moment. How do I try to do this? Well, I have for a long time been a collector of documents, autographs, history books, objects that represent not just an antique, not the object itself, but the stories behind these objects. Obviously, those objects were made by individuals. They belonged to individuals. They meant something to people. And very often the objects take on lives of their own, and they become the remnants of the stories, of the lives that people lived. And I want to tell the story of one particular object that I found a few years ago that actually had a real my own vision of the past, the historic, but it serves as this bridge, this connection between something that happened 80 years ago to us today. And I'm going to tell you the story of a person I have never met. I have never met this person. I have never met the family. And all of the information I got was from publicly available sources, right, on the internet, on archives, and I was able to find and reshape the story of the contribution of this family. Let me tell you, and this is the story, you know, again, a history on a human level. This is the story of one family, of Edward and Blanche. Let me tell you how it began. A few years ago, after giving class at Cal State Fullerton, I crossed the street there on Chapman, and I went to a Goodwill store. Now, you think Goodwill, what? Goodwill is a treasure trove, right, of all kinds of historic documents, historic, it's amazing what you will find at Goodwill for actually a very affordable price. And this is where I go, Robbie, you know. And that day, I usually look for books. I look for CDs, DVDs, look for all kinds of things. That day, honestly, I did not find anything interesting. And so as I was coming out of the store, and I was passing through all these racks and racks of clothes, I just turned around and I saw this one army jacket. And it was, to me, it was like, wow, an army jacket, pretty rare. But I realized, you know, just from knowing a little bit of history, that this was not the bright green color. It was a dark olive color, which meant this was a much, much older than the modern jackets. And so I thought, okay, let me look at this. This is interesting. And I immediately looked at the insignia, right? So this is the army jacket. They wanted $5 for it. I thought, okay, I think I could afford $5 for an army jacket, but let me look at it. It was in perfect condition, absolutely perfect condition. There were no moth holes, no worms. I mean, everything, all the buttons were there. The insignia, the arm patches, everything was there. And I thought, my goodness, where did this come from? Of course, I started, every single, I mean, it's very rare sometimes to find the buttons. You know, collectors take the buttons from these jackets and they sell them individually on eBay, right? And I figured, wow, here is the entire jacket. Let me check the date. Well, here are the arm patches. At the time, I was not really familiar with all of the different insignia. I mean, I can tell several of them, but, you know, I am not a military historian. I'm a cultural historian. But I thought, okay, I will now do my research. And on the left arm was this patch, and on the right arm was this patch. So you can see that whoever this soldier was, it served in two different capacities during his career. I knew from just experience that these were World War II patches. And I figured, okay, this is getting more and more interesting. And these bars here, what they signify is a soldier would earn a bar for every 6 months that they were in the field. And so this soldier served for 2.5 years, you know, and I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing. How did this jacket end up here in Goodwill in Fullerton? I mean, this is, and of course, I took it. I started looking through the inside, the lining, the pockets to find out. And of course, this was a regulation Army officer's uniform. And I looked through the pockets, and it was the custom in those days. These uniforms would be made by private companies, private manufacturers on contracts. And you could see here the contract is December 1st, 1942. 1 year after the United States had entered the war. And so I'm thinking, this is amazing. The condition that this is in is amazing. In one of the pockets, I actually found a box, and I opened the box, and there was a medal. This is the World War II Victory Medal, or one of them, you know, and whoever the officer was had kept it inside the pocket of the jacket. I'm amazed that no one found it, you know, until I did, which was actually very meaningful. What made this even more amazing is that when I opened up in the back lining of the jacket, the officer's name had been stitched onto the back, and his name was Edward C. Dornaker. Now, like I said, I have no idea who Edward C. Dornaker is. I have never met I've never met anyone in the family, but I hear all of a sudden this jacket was no longer just an object. It was a tangible connection to a living person, to someone who had lived, who had experienced this, who now had a story. It was my job as a historian now to resurrect this story, to find out who was Edward C. Dornaker, where had he fought, what was his experience, and why, in some way, I was going to now be connected to this story. You know, why? In a way, I don't want to be mystical about this, but in a way, it is. He was reaching out from the past and touching me directly. You know, and I felt, wow, very lucky. I'm going to see who this person is. So the first thing I did is I started looking at the patches. Where were the patches? Well, this patch on the right arm was from the North African campaign. So this tells me that he was involved at least between 1940 and 43, or at least between 42. He was involved in the North African campaign, which was involved not only in parts of Libya and Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, but they were directly involved in the invasion of Anzio, Italy, in 1944. And so you could see this was a very, very important campaign in the Mediterranean. He was involved in this. Now, the other patch I found, again, from these shoulder sleeve insignias, that he was involved in the European theater of the campaign, the American, in the communication zone. It was this patch that shows that he was directly involved in the planning of D-Day. So whether he participated in D-Day or not, I do not know, but he was involved in the planning. And so you could see that he was a very important a person, a key to understanding two major campaigns of World War II in Europe. Now, as I went into veterans records, I decided, you know, every veteran leaves documentation and records, and from his name, I was able to go into veterans records, and I found out that he was a chief warrant officer, right? The warrant officers are people who are in charge with supplies and strategic distribution of food, weapons, clothing, everything that is needed. He was in the war in, of course, the European theater, right? And all this was contained in page 65 of the records. I found his military serial number, right? 3635-2020, and that he enlisted in June 19th of 1942 in Chicago, Illinois, and that he was a warrant officer from, it doesn't list the military branch, but he was Army. He was an enlisted person, and he was enlisted for the duration of the war or another emergency and for another 6 months. After the war. This was standard after World War II, that as soon as the war ended, that you will continue service for another 6 months until, and then I actually found his enlistment card. This is the actual enlistment card for Edward Charles Dornaker, and I found out again his birthday, November 9th, 1912. And I found out not only his address, but his mother's name, Anna Dornaker, and their address, his employment, his age. He was 27 years old when and you see, all of a sudden, all of this starts coming to life, and the dimension starts widening, because it's not just about him now, it's about his family. I know his mother's name, I know where he comes from. So I started doing research on the family, and I found the census records from 1920, and I found his father, Frank Dornaker, Anna Dornaker, his mother, and his two sisters, and he, when he was only 7 years old. And I thought, oh my goodness, you see how real this person is becoming. He is not just a jacket. It's just not an object. This is a person who lived, who was, who participated, who breathed, right? And then I went on. I found out, well, I found the 1930 census, and I found that when he was 17, he was the only one person, the only child living with his father and mother, right? And so in many records that I looked later, he is listed as an only child. I know for a fact that he had two sisters, because then I found records of his sisters' marriages. But his mother was from St. Clair, Illinois, right? And she married Frank Dorniker, and she was born in 1880, right? And I found her parents. You see, all of a sudden, this whole family is becoming much more detailed, and for some reason, I'm getting more and more involved in this entire family that I've never met. But it's become this very real thing to me. His father, Frank Dorniker, also born in 1878, and describes, and of course, Edward Dorniker is listed. Now, when he returned from the war in 1945, when he returned from the war, I have found several newspapers stories that mention his name. He was a civil engineer. He left Illinois and he came to Southern California. And I found several jobs that he had both as a civil engineer and as a member of the United States Census Service. And here he is in Torrance, and this story here literally describes that Edward Dorniker will be here, and he is organizing the entire Census Bureau of the Information here in Torrance. There's information about him in Long Beach and also in Pasadena, and it's very interesting that he was very, very involved in Southern California, precisely at the time when Southern California was being developed as this new suburban area, right? People are leaving the downtown areas and these suburbs like Norwalk and Long Beach and in Lakewood, all are being built at this time precisely, and some of it financed and subsidized by the GI Bill. And he has a GI as he qualified. He qualified for loans.
No, Leah.
Right? Is there a question?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. But then the amazing thing is, as I kept looking for further records, I actually found in Los Angeles County a list of marriage licenses, and I found his name, Edward C. Dorniker, and I found that he was engaged to a woman named Blanche Jerusek. And of course, then I started going after that. I went into old yearbooks, right? And these yearbooks, this was a yearbook from Wisconsin. And I found the 1935 yearbook, and I found Blanche Jerusek right here. This was eventually will become his wife. And the two of them would come to Southern California, right? Jerusek, basically Blanche had several siblings, and Julia and Francis and Dolores. And I also found out that Francis, her brother, died in Italy in 1944 as part of the Anzio campaign, the retaking of the Italian peninsula. So you can see that this was becoming a very, you could see the sacrifices that the family had known. You could see that this was very important to be documented. I found evidence of their marriage licenses, right, in 1952, and the actual marriage license. This was the performance of the wedding itself by Father Michael Morgan, who was a Catholic priest here in Long Beach. And this, not only that, but I found eventually the house that they were bought in Lakewood. And believe it or not, because he was deceased, I was able to even track down his social security number, which is no longer valid, by the way. And so this is why I am showing. Well, with this information, I thought, wow, I wonder if this house is still here. And this was a picture of the house in Lakewood in 1952. The back of the house. It's been modified. I went there, and this is the actual house that is there today. And it was, of course, nobody in the house had been sold, and there was a new owner. I spoke to the new owner, who became very interested, very fascinated with the whole story. I showed him the jacket, told him the story, and then he went back into his office and found the deed that he had bought. He had just bought the house just 2 months before, and all of a sudden, this entire past, he is literally experiencing it's not just a house, it is basically a part of someone else's life. And then doing more research, I found out that just shortly after I bought the jacket, that Blanche passed away. And so I found her obituary, and it described, her marriage to Edward, her family, her coming to California, her time as an employee of the Pacific Bell Company, and as a teacher at Long Beach City College. And then I was able to find the cemetery in which both of them were buried. And so I went to the cemetery, and I found their graves. And here they are. I found out that Edward had passed away just 2 weeks before I found the jacket. And actually, I'm sorry, just 4 months. He had passed away just 4 months before I found the jacket, and that Blanche had passed away just 2 weeks before. And so you can see this jacket has an entire story. He kept it his entire life. It meant something tremendously important to him, and she kept it, even after. And to me, I was I felt very privileged to not only be able to find it, but be able to preserve it. It is unknown. They had no children, and it's the story that needs to be told, because it talks not only about a war that happened 80 years ago, but the building of Southern California, the very human stories, the people who lived, and who contributed and who created these, conditions so that we now live, that we are here. And, the ancient Mesopotamians believed that your spirit would continue to exist only as long as people remembered you on earth, and that when people forgot who you were, that you simply would disappear. I like to think that even though I'm not a very religious person, I do like to think that it is important that we celebrate the individual stories, that human side to people, that we connect to the contributions, understand and celebrate and commemorate the contributions that people did. They very often get forgotten. And I think as a historian, it becomes very important to bring in a much more human, much more realistic, much one-on-one dimension, rather than this abstract, distant forms of history that we are used to. I don't know. Like I said, why I became so incredibly attached to this. I guess I have never met the family. I have never met this. I had never heard of this person before, but it is amazing how important and what a part of my story this has become too. I guess I can, and I think when giving when telling people about Edward and Blanche, it becomes important, to convey, that every one of us is also contributing. Right? Every one of us is always that, even on the level that we may not be aware of, but people in the future will also look back, and who knows what tangible things that we'll leave, what objects, what stories that we will leave that we may not even think is important, but they are. Every story, every person, every action leaves a consequence, and people will remember. And so, and that is my presentation. So I'm going to stop share.
Thank you very much for presentation, Professor.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Professor Simoes.
Thank you, Bianca.
At this point, we will be opening things up for discussion. Does anyone have any further or any questions for Professor Simoes?
I have one.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think when you were explaining after you found their graves, I think you were explaining about where the jacket was, and I think your mic cut out a little bit. So I want to know like where the jacket is now. Like, do you still have possession of it?
I don't know if you could see this, but yes, I have the jacket
There it is.
with me right now. Here it is.
Wow.
Yes, in fact, it's actually one of my proudest possessions.
Oh,
You know, and it is my goal. It is my goal to eventually return this jacket to the family.
oh.
Right? I have been able to trace the niece of Edward Dorniker and Blanche, and I have come into contact with her, and she knows that I have used this jacket, you know, as a means again to connect with the past, but I will return this jacket to the family. That is my
Oh,
goal.
that's fantastic.
Mhm.
Oh.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. That was an incredible story. And I love thrifting. So hearing this whole new perspective of how you were able to connect with these people and just really embody this whole story and their history was incredible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, do you want to go to the next page, please?
Get it?
Okay, so the best way to look for errors is reading out loud. So for this breakout room activity, you'll be in a breakout room of 2 people where you will practice reading your speech with your partner. And if you do end up being paired with a board member, we will be there for assistance, and we will be giving you roughly 20 minutes for this breakout room. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I'm just going to clarify real quick that the breakout rooms are organized to have like 2 people who are participating and then possibly a board member who can, you know, you can bounce ideas off of and everything like that. Also, if the board member has a speech, you know, feel free to use this time to, okay. Yeah, so I'm going to send everybody out into the breakout rooms. We'll probably do like just 15 minutes. So just like read it out loud and get your feedback from each other. And then if you do need to leave early, or we're just going to, at the end of it, let you know what is expected for next week, which is just to have your rough draft completed, because we'll be going over performance tips and what to expect then for the next week, which will be us giving our presentations. So that'll be the focus on that week. So with that said, I'm going to send you all into the breakout rooms, and then thank you all so much.
Okay, Mark.
Thank you. Mark, I have a quick question.
Okay, we'll start. Just one second with
Yeah.
Professor Simoes, real quick.
Mark, I just was wondering, I do have another commitment, so
Yes.
Would it be okay if I leave at this
Absolutely.
time?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
I
totally fine.
didn't assign you to a breakout room, so you're good.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
everyone.
Professor.
This was a real privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and then Umbeline.
Yeah, so I had a quick question. So next week will be our speech, right? So we'll just
Yep.
be coming on that Zoom and just talk to like everyone that is participating, right?
Next week, finish editing your rough draft and have it like in a good place, and then we'll talk about how we'll give you like tips on actually giving your speech, and then
Okay.
we'll talk about the logistics of the event itself, which will be, you know, about you know, we'll come up like with a schedule about like who's coming after who and that sort of
Okay.
thing. So we'll
So
have,
that will be next week. So the giving speech will not be until 2 weeks, right?
yes, that's
Or-
correct.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to make sure. I wasn't sure, but
And
making
both of
sure that
those
we
are-
have our speech ready next week.
Yes, and both of those are at, yeah, the show is at the 13th of November, and it's both at 1 p.m.
Okay, yeah, perfect. I wanted to make sure I can attend both. Thank you so much, Mark.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. Feel free to, there's going to be 1 or 2 board members in the main room, so you can leave the breakout rooms if you have questions and go back or whatever you need to do. Okay, see you guys.